Maharashtrians and historians have found a common nemesis in Sanjay Leela Bhansali. We have a bone to pick with him. Our eyes bled when we saw the massacre that happened of Maharashtrian culture and history when we saw Bajirao Mastani. When you attempt to take a leaf out of history, it should be done with the precision of a surgeon. It shouldn't become a parody of its own subject, which is why it is important to introduce our next author for the day. He is no ordinary author. He wields a scalpel at the time that he is not using his pen. The surgeon come non-fiction author is an alumnus of the Armed Forces Medical College in Pune. He took his medical skills to the Indian Navy, honorably retiring as Surgeon Commander. Dr. Kulkarni's interest in Maratha history was too strong to be ignored, and the good doctor put his pen to paper, authoring his first book, Solstice at Panipat, in 2011. His deep dive into Maratha history translated into many more books on the Maratha Empire. Dr. Uday Kulkarni is a fellow at Royal Asiatic Society and a member of Bhandarkar Original Research Institute. He has traveled far and wide in search of documents and paintings that detail the history that he is trying to bring to light with his books. His latest trip to the past is through the book The Mastery of Hindustan, which details the rule of Madhavrao Peshwa, who single-handedly brought the Maratha back from the brink of ruin after the Battle of Panipat. The book is the third and final book in his Peshwa trilogy. Moderating this session is Professor Vivek Nanoti, who is the Director Engineering at LTJSS at Priyadarshini Group of Institutions. He was also a former National Executive Member of Indian Society of Technical Education. And he is one of the most beloved professors in engineering circles and a gifted singer. I request Professor Nanoti to please usher Dr. Uday Kulkarni on stage. Thank you.
Very good afternoon to all of you. The passionate lovers for literature, the avid readers of Nagpur, love for history has brought all of you here. Thanks a lot for being here and witnessing an amazing journey. Taking back to 17th and 18th century, a surgeon, a Navy officer, kaisa, you cannot connect. And that is where versatility matters. A renowned surgeon, a 16 years Navy officer, a committed Navy officer, and the true love for history for from 2011. I'm extremely delighted, feeling proud, privileged, and honored to have conversation with today's amazing author, Dr. Uday Kulkarni. Sir, namaskar, and welcome to this VLF. And it's non-fiction for inclusion.
Thank you.
Non-fiction for inclusion. Amazing team. He started with, Bajirao Mastani and Madhavrao Ramabai. Come on, they are 1%, I guess that is what Dr. Kulkarni says. Sir, about you, we just want to know more about how such an versatility. A journalist, a topper in journalism course, and amazing sketching. And a singer too. Come on. I mean, this is something which is to be, only believed because he is saying. Thank you so much, sir, for being on our show. And let me ask you, people say, so much of versatility and dimensions to your personality, schooling and parenting plays some very important impact. What do you say about that?
I suppose that's true for almost all of us. And parenting does make a difference. Schooling makes a difference. And I think I wrote my first book on history when I was in standard 6th, age 10.
Oh.
On a school notebook. I was living in a boarding school, so I didn't have my parents to prompt me to do something. And it was probably something which came from within, and I still have that notebook with me. In 9th standard, I even revised it and thought it was too childish and so on. Now that 9th standard also is childish. So there was some seed of that love for history which was from within. My grandfather was a historian, and he had a library. I have been hearing stories of Shivaji Maharaj, old books printed 100 years back, which he had given to me as gifts.
That's sanskars.
So those books I still have with me, and that is where it started, I suppose. And then you go for medical education, admission,
And
practice.
schooling, like, you know.
Schooling also, because we were in a hostel, and our school was a very different kind of school, run by a Parsi gentleman, Mr. Nagarwala.
Okay.
And it was a different atmosphere. It was a very cosmopolitan setup. And later on, when I joined AFMC, we again had the same kind of setup. We joined the Indian Navy, where again the principle, I mean, the ideological thing, there was a continuum right from school. It was inclusion all the way till I finished my 16 years in the Navy. And then I practiced in Pune for the last 2 decades or more.
Yes.
And full-fledged as a surgeon. But somewhere along the line, I don't know if I'm anticipating your questions.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, I used to keep reading history and I used to feel the way Indian history has been portrayed or projected.
Right.
Something is missing, or there is a tilt or a slant in whatever narrative has been portrayed by historians of the past.
Oh.
And it was, in fact, my course in journalism, which I did after leaving the Navy, was partly because of the newspapers I used to read. And there are very learned discourses on there's a Lok Sabha election here, then this caste has got so many percent, this caste has got so many percent, so this election will be won by so and so, which I found very, I mean, perpetuating the divide in our society. And it was out of this that I said I must do journalism myself, though I didn't practice much of it. So that led to 1 year of journalism in between.
And you ranked top.
Yeah, that I mean just happened on the way.
That is something
I think
like,
I had an
you know,
unfair advantage over the others because I was already quite old. Then history was there somewhere, and that's how the journey began, which I'm sure we'll take up in subsequent questions.
Thank you for throwing light, because I know he wrote his first book in 2011, and it was not 2011, it was 6th standard, rewritten and improved in 9th standard, and then finally an author came out after in service of like 16 years into Navy. That is something, you know, जब अंदर होता है पैशन तो ऊपर उठ के आता है, and he is a lucky man into doing that. So first book, sir, and why battle of, like, you know, पानिपत का बरं असं, कारण महाराष्ट्रामध्ये इतिहास म्हटलं महाराष्ट्राचा आता शिवाजी महाराज पहिले आठवतात, तर एकदम बॅटल ऑफ पानिपत, how it clicked, and then you carried on the same, on the, you know, similar lines.
Actually, in 1761, the Battle of Panipat was fought, and 2011 was the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Panipat.
Okay.
And if you look at Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, you will find so much has been written in the last 100 years that if I have to write about the 17th century, not only have I to read all that, but I have to add to it. I mean, at least I should be able to add 5% of what has already been discovered, which is a Herculean task actually. So, but on the other hand, I found that the entire 18th century was open. In fact, there's an 18th century debate going on among historians. What does it actually represent? Was it Maratha rule? Was it Mughal rule? Was it British rule? Or was it anarchic? Right. So this debate continues. And as I read books, I found that every author had his own take on this. Right. And I personally felt that when the Maratha horse crosses the Sindhu river, right, from Attock to the Maratha ditch of Calcutta, and from the foothills of the Kumaons till the Kaveri, when this entire expanse was covered in the 18th century by the Marathas, I think they have a place in the history of India in the 18th century, which has not been adequately amplified by previous authors. Okay. And I wanted to correct that imbalance. Yes, yes. And it was, Panipat was 250th anniversary was coming up. I didn't anticipate I'll write 7 books. Anniversary since then. 300 years. So I wanted to write about Panipat, which covered the period from Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj right up to 1761. Right. With major portion of the book being from the death of Aurangzeb onwards. Because that is one watershed in Indian history. And that book, somehow they clicked. And in the first year itself, I sold 1 edition. Great. I got some more papers. I made a 2nd edition a year later. And that made me, because when I first wrote a book, I was a surgeon. Nobody knew me as anybody. There was no reason anybody will buy my books. But somehow they clicked. And then Ninad Bedekar was a historian, late Ninad Bedekar. And he, in fact, I was planning to write what I've written now. Okay. Post-Panipat period after that as a follow-up. So he said, no, you go back. Go back to the period of Bajirao and start from the beginning. So, and in between I found some documents that also was published as a Bakhar of Panipat. Then Bajirao came up after that. Then the logical sequelae was the period of Nana Sahib Peshwa. Now, these are not biographies because they tell the story of a period in yes, Indian history, of which these were the most prominent characters of that period. Right. That is why you find the era of Bajirao, The Extraordinary Epoch of Nana Sahib Peshwa, or The Mastery of Hindustan, again, Triumphs and Travails of Madhavrao Peshwa.
Title also says like
Yes.
Varti Nana Sahib Peshwa upar nahi hai.
नहीं,
Madhavrao Peshwa Varti
they
nahi
were
hai
the
pehle.
most prominent
Yes, it
people
is.
in Indian politics, in Indian landscape at that point in time. And that's why, but I have also discussed the Anglo-French rivalry, the Battle of Plassey, in this book, the Battle of Buxar.
Right.
So it is a composite history of the whole subcontinent, but a lot of neglected, unknown Maratha history, because many of the English-speaking authors don't have access to Marathi papers. And there are thousands and thousands of published and unpublished papers which have not been referred to when English-speaking historians have written about Indian history of the 18th century. And I felt with my knowledge of Marathi as well as English, I could put them before the history reading audience. And that is why the book has got these additional features which are not there in any other books.
Right. But you started, that how come that Bakhar of Panipat? When I first book to find, it was like I could see the pictures. I mean, if you Google Uday Kulkarni, sir, I mean, he has so much presence on digital media. This is a generation of digital media. And then you can see this is his 7th book. 6 consecutive books on similar thought, well researched. And this is his 7th. So, but Bakhar Panipatchi, and iske liye, I mean, you translated it also. I mean, because that language is not, familiar. So, tell us something about that.
Actually, in 1907 and again in 1926, there were 2 articles written by Rao Bahadur Parasnis, who was from Satara, where he wrote about Maratha historiography, but he regretted that many documents were taken by English officials to UK and which have not been traced since then. But he mentioned that some of them have been deposited with the Royal Asiatic Society of London.
Okay.
So I corresponded with the Royal Asiatic Society and I said, this is the page from that article, and it's been 100 years now, and it's time we start looking for these. So one very energetic librarian there, she actually went for a physical search because they didn't have a proper catalogue. And she found these letters in the very last box that she searched.
Is it?
And these letters which were found were actually given to 2 English officials, Charles Mallet, who was a resident in Pune, and the second was John Briggs, who was the resident at Satara after 1818. And you found that while Mallet collected a lot of Bakhars from here and took them there, because he intended to write a history of the Marathas after going back to England, which he never got around to doing. And the second was Nana Fadnis's own documents, which his wife, his widow, actually gave to John Briggs. And if you see the Nana Fadnis documents, you find there are such important documents there, which John Briggs took there again, intending to write a biography on Nana Fadnis. But when he went there, he found that since the Maratha Empire had already been extinguished since 1818, there were no takers for that story. So he just wrote
the irony of it.
Yes. So he just wrote an article, and those documents were deposited in the Royal Asiatic. And when I went to England in 2013, I got scanned copies of about 200 pages. And that 80 pages of that was a complete Bakhar of Panipat, which was written just a few months after the battle. It was written by the Raja Mandal of Kolhapur. And right up to the accession of Madhavrao Peshwa, the story ends there. And that gives a different narrative of what we are referred today is the Persian narrative of Kashiraj Pandit, which was written 19 years after Panipat, which is also a Bakhar. Well, Panipat Bakhar with heavy mythological overlay was written a couple of months after the battle. And the author, Raghunath Yadav, says, I was present on the battlefield. So that's why that was important. And my entire purpose of writing in English was that the Maratha history has to go outside Maharashtra in a language which the next generation reads and which non-Maharashtrians can also appreciate. And therefore that's why I had to translate it into English.
And see, I mean, it's so surprising to understand that all Maharashtrians, all those who are proud of Maharashtra and our history and Peshwas and Shivaji, and we are deprived of all those documents. Salute to sir and thanks a lot on entire, history lovers of Maharashtra की असे काहीतरी डॉक्युमेंट इथे इतका प्रयत्न करून वापस लाना, इट्स सच एन अमेजिंग अचीवमेंट. इसके लिए बहुत जिद लगती है, इसके लिए बहुत पैशन लगता है. जो अवेलेबल है ना वो बहुत आसान है. कुठेतरी इथे खूप आतमध्ये जबरदस्त जिद्द लागते आणि एक जिज्ञासा वृत्ती लागते. ती जिज्ञासा आणि जिद्द, सर सॅल्यूट टू यू, बिकॉज वेन आय वॉज कमिंग बॅक टू बुक येस मास्टरी ऑफ हिंदुस्तान, हे पुस्तक जेव्हा बघाल ना, आई विल रिक्वेस्ट, ये जो किताब देखने के बाद यू विल फील that this is equivalent to 2 PhDs or 1 delete. I mean, the kind of research that he has put in into, salute to it. And the maps, the 20 appendix letters, original letters from London, from Amsterdam, from US. I mean, amazing. 24 maps. See the strength of this book. And you can see, I mean, it is, you feel like proud, like, Peshwas, So, ye uthane mein bhi ek maza aa raha hai. So, see the size of book. 24 maps. And what? 1300 references. A good PhD thesis is good with 500 references. मी PhD गाइड करतो आणि आमच्या मुलांनी PhD स्टुडंटने अगर 50-100 रेफरन्स ले लिए तो आई से कि यू हैव डन अ गुड रिसर्च. 1300 references. Can you believe getting 1300 and reading and getting through and finding out amazing work he has put in. 24 maps, 72 color pictures. और कहाँ से है? I mean, मैंने तो वो रखा हुआ है. You can imagine. When if you roll around these, such a rare colored pictures you will find. And he has also mentioned, acknowledged from where he has received that. Sir, London, Amsterdam, Yale University. ये कैसा इतना पैशन कहाँ से आता है? It is such a and collecting like so many amazing. This is worth preserving. I'm really saying that. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I mean, it's just something which has happened. I mean, I didn't plan to venture into this field, but once you are in it, and I believe that if you put your name on a book, you must have a job, work which you are proud of and which will be complete in itself. And that's what I have always endeavored to do. So every part of this book, whether it's the cover design, the quality of paper, the printing which is used, the spacing between lines, everything is my own attention has been given to it. Not a single thing in this book has been designed or composed or whatever by anybody else. So I pay attention to the book from cradle to grave, as we call it medicine.
Yes.
The medical care is cradle to grave. The book is from cradle to grave. I've got my eye on everything. So it's just there. I mean, probably I have got a deficiency. I can't delegate work to somebody else.
Right.
That is the problem.
That shows. I mean, there are days when people get books written from. I mean, sorry to mention such people even on this platform. But, what was the idea? Like 24 colored pages and like pictures so rare. And then at the end also I could see like Ramabainchi Samadhi's chitra hai, Theur Ganpati's chitra hai. I mean, this is like book which you need to preserve.
This is the only picture which I got of Madhavrao with Ramabai, an original 18th century painting, which is one of the royal families of Maharashtra in their personal collection. So that is being published for the first time. You don't have a picture of Ramabai, an authentic picture. Yeah. So that he lent it to me. Then he also had in his family archives a letter of the Moti Talav battle with Hyder Ali, where you will find in that letter that not only are the important chiefs who were killed and injured, and then their injuries are described as light wounds, moderate wounds, major wounds, but the death of horses is given the same importance as the death of the people killed in that battle. It is like the horses of those days were like the Mercedes-Benz and of the riders, because without a rider, the soldier could not fight. So they cared for their horses as much as the men who were killed in that battle. So that casualty report is a unique document.
Right. And sir, Bajirao, Nanasaheb Peshwa, and then Madhavrao. I mean, what is your perception and comparison about? I mean, Madhavrao could have he could work only for 10, 11 years. Ajun काही वर्ष जगले असते तर, this is a question. Bhagat Singh, अजून एक 10 वर्ष असते तर, but we don't have any reply. So, या विषयी काय बोलाल sir?
Bajirao was a period when actually the Maratha Empire, which was uncertain about its future, I would say, at that point in time. And in 1720, when he became the Peshwa, nobody really knew what he's going to achieve. He was an unknown quantity for the first 7 or 8 years, till he defeated the Nizam in Palkhed in 1728. And as eminent a person as Field Marshal Montgomery refers to it as a masterpiece in strategic mobility, the way he defeated the Nizam there. And the defeat of the Nizam, who was an undefeated general till that point in time, suddenly took Bajirao to nationwide consciousness in 1728. In fact, he defeated the Nizam one more time after that. His dash to Delhi in 1737, when Bajirao reached the door of Delhi, it was the first time in 180 years that Delhi had seen an invader at its doorstep. And they didn't have enough army to defend themselves because their armies were all south of Delhi. And Bajirao found a way to pass between them to reach Delhi at that time. And his purpose at that time was very simple. He wanted to show the emperor the Marathas can reach Delhi. And in his letter, he writes to his brother, if I wanted, I could have burnt the suburbs of Delhi. But I didn't want to do that because that breaks the cord of diplomacy. So the difference between what are commonly called by the very many English writing authors that the Marathas were marauders and they were raiders and all. Now this language gives that war was diplomacy by other means. He went there because he wanted a cession of the province of Malwa, which Muhammad Shah was not agreeing to. So he showed him that I can reach Delhi. And within 3 or 4 years after that, Malwa was ceded. So this was the way in which even the Portuguese were defeated in 1739 by Chimajiappa. They were allowed to go with their families respectfully. Yes. They were not
this was
killed
like really, yeah.
with their women and with their band to their ships, and they vacated Vasai and went to Goa. So this was a treatment of a defeated enemy. And you counter that with what happened after Panipat. It was okay, Marathas faced a defeat. But of the non-combatants, several thousands of them were lined up in a line. They were given some water and pieces of gram in their hand, and their heads were chopped off, serially.
It's pathetic.
And then you find that these minars of heads were put outside the tents of all the important chiefs from the Afghan army. So this is the difference. But you find eminent historians of the past praising this Afghan general who came and attacked India, while castigating the Marathas for supposed excesses in war. Well, the Marathas were never known for cruelty to the defeated enemy.
Yes, that was our tradition, heritage, and that's why even enemies have, a big regards for Peshwas
And as far as Nana Sahib's period was a very complex period, because that was a time which saw the English and the French rivalry begin in the Karnataka, in Arcot, and from there they spread to Bengal. If you see why the Bombay Principality of the English did not grow, it was because of the presence of the Marathas. Till 1818, the entire western coast, from Surat to Goa, was in Maratha hands. Yes. While you find that in Bengal, the English spread from there. In Karnataka, the English spread from Madras. But it was only in Bombay that the Marathas stopped them from entering Western India. So Western India, Malwa, Bundelkhand, Gujarat, Orissa, Nagpur, and up to the northern borders of Tungabhadra remained the core of the Maratha Empire right up to 1802 or 1803.
And then empire, and into this era, Madhara's era. So people have still that Maharashtra, Satara, Pune, Mumbai. Was it like that, or what was the spread earlier?
So Madhavrao had a very strange legacy. At the age of 16, his elder brother, who was probably going to be the next Peshwa, was killed at Panipat. His uncle, Sadashivara Bhau, was killed at Panipat. His Nana Sahib Peshwa's cousin, Shamsher Bahadur, the son of Bajirao and Mastani, he was killed after Panipat. And Nana Sahib himself was in terminal illness. He was suffering from that. He died 6 months later. So it was not just Panipat, it was a double whammy. That the entire leadership of the Marathas was wiped out. Nana Sahib Peshwa was killed. And a young 16-year-old man is anointed as the Peshwa, who never expected to be the Peshwa to start with. So the odds were all stacked against him. And you find that the north, the Marathas are pushed south of the Chambal. A very elderly 70-year-old Mallara Holkar is the only person who is defending them in the north. In the south, the Nizam is attacking Pune. Pune was burnt. 2/3 of Pune was burnt in 1763. Hyder Ali was coming northwards. He had almost been defeated just before the Battle of Panipat. The Maratha army withdrew when they heard of Panipat happening in the north. And these were all crowding around the center at Pune. And that is a time when this man comes to power. And then he has got domestic enemies. His own uncle wants to become the Peshwa or wants to grab power. So that was a recurring theme throughout the book. When you find Raghava Dada or Raghunath Rao continuously opposing Madhavrao throughout his years, he had to imprison him in the end. So this whole period was full of very adverse situation, which he overcame. He defeated Hyder Ali 3 times. He put the Nizam in his place, and he captured Delhi. Captured Delhi to the extent that Shah Alam, who was in exile at Allahabad, was brought by Mahatji Shinde and put on the throne of Delhi in 1772. And from 1772, except for a few years in 1780s, you find that the Marathas were in control of Delhi till 1803, when the British took over. So you find that the 18th century from Delhi to the south was under Maratha control for the most part. But today history is portrayed that the Mughals were there and the Battle of Plassey took place and the British Empire started.
This is where research plays its role.
Which is a travesty. I mean, this is the wrong history being told to our people. So this had to be corrected at some point.
So important point to be noted. And then one more on the similar lines, I would like to ask one question. Like when you talk about, Shivaji Maharaj, when you, are around 87 or 88, I think Swami novel was so, Ranjit Desai. I mean, most of us must have read that. Swami novel is famous. Mag Ravind Mankani and Mrunal Dev. Serial was super hit. And then we know that fiction on that era would like pick up like anything, can attract more audience. Asa kahi nahi watla ka, and you chose non-fiction. You chose a research-oriented, original something to be giving back to the Maharashtra. So what you...
Basically what happens is when you want making a serial or a book, you want to make it attractive to the reader. So the bit of romance is very essential. So it is Rama Madhav or it is Bajirao Mastani. And so the whole, it attracts eyeballs, it attracts feet. But you find when you're reading history, the truth is even more interesting than fiction. Of course. And it's, I would personally feel it when a person wants to write a Kadambari, he is just trying to avoid research. You can just imagine things and write whatever you want. And you just label it as fiction and the matter is done. But if you want to really work and get the real story, then you have to be prepared to work hard. And it's very easy to dish out fictional works. So, I mean, I really appreciate this festival, Vidarbha Festival, because of its prominence to non-fiction. And I think that being the only non-fiction festival in India, it's really important that this continues.
Because only, interesting telling, stories. And then that becomes so prominent कि सत्य काय है विसरून जातो. Like we were discussing in the morning about Tanaji Malusre.
For example, Simhagad, the fort which was captured by Tanaji Malusre in 1763. Not many people know that the name of the fort was Simhagad even before that. And it was the novel by Hari Narayan Apte where he wrote Gad Alapan Simhagela, which gives the people impression that the name was given as Simhagad after Tanaji Malusre captured it. There's an original letter of 1660 which mentions Simhagad as the name of that fort. And Kondana was also there. So this name was there before that. But the conception is that no, Gad Alapan Simhagela, that is a time when the name was...
In fact, the most popular dialogue, Gad Alapan Simhagela. महाराजांचा सगळ्यात पॉप्युलर डायलॉग त्या सिनेमातला असेल, त्याने अनेक सिनेमांमध्ये असेल. So, this is something where people like Dr. Uday Kulkarni contributes to what is true, what is to be given to the society, what is to be told and the true story told, And we're coming back to this book, sir. What can be the, true attraction for people? Frankly, what I feel is, after having this book in my hand, I will keep it in my physics library also. Why? Because the kind of research he has put in, एक अच्छा डिलीट थीसिस कैसे लिखते हैं, एक चांगला पीएचडी थीसिस कसा लिहावा, इसके लिए एक रोल मॉडल बुक है ये, क्योंकि इतना बड़ा तो डिलीट भी कोई नहीं लिखता. So, and delete cannot be, enjoyed. But this has a double extra benefit. This is a research thing and equally interesting that you will enjoy reading an entire book in one sitting also. So this combination, sir, amazing combination that because इतका research असल्यावर आपल्याला वाटतं काहीतरी PhD thesis कोई नहीं पढ़ता, delete thesis कोई वाचत नहीं, पण इसमें वो flavor लाने के बाद भी book has, and all your 6-7 books have been so popular and second print and third edition. So amazing. This combination, the balance kasa rahela manje.
Basically, the book, if you want to convey something, it has to be readable. The first thing. When I write a chapter, I give it to the few people to read. Right. Is it readable? Is it interesting? I ask only 2 questions.
Yes.
If they say, no, this chapter has got too much of, try to make it a little more lighter or try to change some parts of it, I can do that. Yes. But the point is, the first prerequisite is while you are writing non-fiction, it should also be interesting. It should also be readable. And that is very, very important. Therefore, the titles of the chapters, if you read the titles, they are in the manner that will encourage the reader to go to the next chapter. The end of the previous chapter is designed in a manner that it will raise an expectation of what is going to come in the next chapter. They are divided into 4 books. The first book is The Abyss, because that's where the Maratha Empire collapsed. The second is the foreign hand, which was how the English advanced from Bengal to Plassey and took over Banaras. The third part is the middle overs. I used a cricketing term when Madhavrao was making his presence felt, defeating Hyder Ali. And the last one is when he captured Delhi, which was the mastery of Hindustan. And of course, those 11, 12 years, though they are just 12 years, as you progress further in the 18th century, the number of resources available to you, Marathi resources, Persian resources, Rajasthani resources, English, they are so many and so voluminous that the size of the book remains the same, but the number of years in that keep reducing.
Yes.
That is the, and you don't know what to leave out because you want to give a correct picture of what was happening. There are multiple agencies at play, and like letters written by Shujaud-Daula Awadh to the English. On the other hand, he's corresponding with the Marathas also, he's corresponding with the Rajputs and others, and he's corresponding with the English. What are his motives?
Yeah.
You can only get those if you have a complete picture.
I mean, what an exhaustive bibliography. If you go through it, such an exhaustive, I mean, references, of course, the 1300 references, like in the bibliography you have mentioned, and then so including so many maps and so many colored pictures, makes that book entirely so interesting that yes, we have raised the curiosity of, reading and going through this book immediately. Sir, at the end, appendices, there are many, like I think 10 are there, and they are also very interesting. And so I would like to know that, they are like letters, they are certain mentions, special mentions into that language, taking you to that era. You may not even understand because it's not even Marathi or Hindi. So, त्याबद्दल काही आपल्याला कसं सांगता येईल? Or would you...
There are some very interesting treaties signed by, when Raghova Dada was defeated by Madhavrao and he was made to sign a treaty. You find Nana Fadnis representing Madhavrao in his dealings with Raghova Dada, and the clauses which he mentions, and then Raghova gives his reply, ki whether he will accept it, what are the conditions on which he accepts. This is very entertaining.
If you can read
I don't know, there's
one of them for us.
There is a Marathi version also and there's an English version also. So I'll read the translation now because
yes.
the Marathi version, I don't know how many people will understand, but the Marathi original language is really worth reading. And
so, you can see the actual photographs of those available in
So in 1769, after Raghova Dada defeated at the fort of Dhodap near Nashik and brought to Shanwarwada as a prisoner, he writes there's a treaty between Nana Fadnis and Raghova Dada. Nana Fadnis says, Kalam 1, Rajkaran kuthehi kahi karu nahi. You will not indulge in politics anywhere. Raghunath Rao says, Karit nahi, yene pramane karar. So agreed. Then Nana Fadnis says, Nirop magu nahi, means to go out of Pune. So he says, Agrah karnar nahi, yene pramane karar. I will not insist on it. Nana Fadnis says, Gadbad aslyas kilyavar jeva mantle, teva saral dene. नावे लांबू नयेत. When we ask for a fort to be handed over, it should be given straight away. रघुनाथराव, आम्ही गडबड प्राप्त झाल्यास तुमचे विश्वासावर जाऊ, परंतु मोठे अगत्यास पाठवावे, लवकर आणावे, विश्वासघात करू नये, आम्ही तर जाऊच, ईश्वरावर भार देऊ, येणेप्रमाणे कराल. So this language and these conditions and these replies which are given are very interesting. Nana Fadnis says, upas करू नये, because the upas was sometimes considered as a means, in those days when people believed in all these black magic and all that, as a means to harm Madhavrao. And Madhavrao was already ailing, and people thought that probably because Raghova is doing some this thing for him. Upas karu nahi. Tumi karara pramane vartalyas tumhas rage bharun upas karnar nahi. Yene pramane kara. Chitti kagad pathu nahi. Don't send letters to other powers. He used to often correspond with Nizam, with Hyder Ali, even with Janoji Bhosle of Nagpur. चोरून पाठविणार नाही, पाठवणे ती राखून पाठवू, तुम्हाला दाखवून पाठवू. वी वॉन्ट सेंड इट इन अ सरप्टिशियस वे. नव्या गोष्टी काढू नये. डोंट ब्रिंग आउट न्यू इश्यूज. सो रघुनाथराव, कार्याकारण रदबदल करावी लागेल, चित्तास येईल ते ऐकावी. सो यू कॅन हिअर मी वेन आय वॉन्ट टू से समथिंग. आमचे वाईट होण्याविषयी अनुष्ठान करू नये. प्लीज डोंट होल्ड एनी दिस थिंग्स दॅट वी आर हार्म्ड. व करवूही नये असं कलम. रघुनाथराव, तुमच्या नाशाची प्रार्थना जवळ करणार नाही, आपल्या बऱ्याची मात्र करीतो. आय विल डू फॉर माय ओन बेनिफिट बट नॉट फॉर युअर डिस्ट्रक्शन. दुजा धरणार नाही, एबीसी कोणा ब्राह्मणा सांगणार नाही, आम्ही नकलत होत असेल त्याचे शब्द आम्हाकडे नाही. इफ समबडी इज डुईंग इट ऑन हिज ओन, देन आय कांट हेल्प इट. So all these clauses are written by Raghova. So this kind of this original letter, you'll be surprised, is in London. And I got a scanned copy of it, and that's how I could publish the original version of this letter. So it gives you an insight of the way people thought in those days, their beliefs, which in 21st century you will say what silly people they are. In my Panipat book, there's a clause where Raghunath Rao writes a letter that before the Battle of Udgir in 1759, one cannon burst. Now the cannons were given names. This was called the Lakshmi cannon. So he says some Englishman came, some man from the enemy came to see it, and then next day it burst. So the implication was that he did some black magic to that cannon, that's why it burst. Most of the time the bore of the cannon was not uniform, the cannon shell was not designed for that cannon, they put anything inside it and just fired it. So this technical know-how was not available, but they thought it is some kind of black magic done by some visitor who came there and put some powder on it, and that's why next day it burst. So this was an understanding which was there at that point in time. So this is just as an aside I'm saying, but it throws a light. But there are about 400-500 original letters I've translated in this book, and the Marathi edition already translation is going on, where the original ones will be published in their original language. So that gives you a real insight into way people are thinking.
The mindset of that era, see how they were confronting to each other, and the kind of mindset, when you can learn behavioral sciences also through this, and the psychology they used to have, and how it got evolved today. If some, Kaka आणि पुतणे आज काय बोलतात आहे, and what Raghova and Madhav Rao used to, converse. So it was very interesting to know. One more thing, many of us, the curiosity has raised, की याच्या आधीची पुस्तक आम्ही वाचलेली नाहीत. This is like something, yes, of course, Madhav Peshwa. But before that, he had an amazing, book on Nana Sahib. And before that, Bajirao, and few more before that. So I think for all those who have there, it's now he has recently come up with a trilogy. I mean, what is that?
Trilogy, basically, Bajirao, from era of Bajirao, the extraordinary epoch of Nana Sahib Peshwa, and this book, Mastery of Hindustan. Together, these three books deal with the period from the beginning of Balaji Vishwanath, 1713, till the death of Madhav Rao, which was 1772. And this is called the real period of the Peshwai. After Madhav Rao died, there was no Peshwa in control of the Maratha Empire. That period is called the Uttar Peshwai, because Narayan Rao was assassinated just 9 months later. And then the next Peshwa was a 40-day-old infant. And the ministers were managing the show, the Sardars were managing the show, Nana Fadnis and Sakharam Bapu and Mahatji Shinde, they were managing the show. So this is that the period after this comes to the Uttar Peshwa. So the idea of putting these three together as the Peshwa trilogy was that in these three books you find that the four main Peshwas period has been covered. That's why I came up with the Peshwa trilogy.
Right. And so we are looking forward for that also, and it's available on Amazon, right? This book is also available very much on Amazon. Sir, reaching out to, there are, I think, some students are also there. What is that passion you pursued for getting things? Most of the time, like if you call librarian at London or US or even in Pune, नागपुर तो वी हैव लाइक एन एडजेसेंट लेबोरेटरी से भी मेरे को 2 पेपर लेना है तो बहुत डिफिकल्ट होता है. एंड गेटिंग फ्रॉम लंडन, गेटिंग फ्रॉम डिफरंट पीपल, एंड यू आर नॉट अ पर्सन फ्रॉम हिस्ट्री. तर तुमचा तसा सेटअप नाही आहे की तुमचे मित्र क्लासमेट. सो आई मीन व्हाट वाज दैट, व्हाट वाज दैट एक्सपीरियंस? वाज इट अ गुड और बैड? आई मीन
you'll be surprised to find that libraries abroad, especially UK and USA, are very prompt in replying to your emails, and most of their holdings are available online. So you can see, suppose San Diego has got a museum, or Los Angeles has got a museum, or Yale has got, their holdings are all on their websites. So if you are looking for something, it is there. When you find the shelf mark, you have to send them an email that this is what I'm interested in. Like when I wrote the book on James Wales. He was a Scottish artist who came here and spent 4 years in India, in Bombay and Pune primarily, and he went to Verud and Ajanta also. So, not Ajanta, Verud. So, he came here, and his original manuscript diaries of the years he spent in India were deposited in the Yale Center for British Art in the Yale University. And he has drawn about 300 pictures, he and his friends, when they were here for those 4 years. And those pictures are scattered all over the world. Many of them are in Yale, some are in the Victoria Memorial in Calcutta, some are there in Poland. So, I had to gather all these pictures, and then to get those manuscripts from Yale, I sent them a mail that can I have those manuscript diaries of James Wales. So they said they have not been digitized as yet, but we'll digitize them and the digitization will be done in 6 months. So 6 months later, when I sent them a mail saying that have you got the manuscript diaries of James Wales digitized, that they have just been completed last week. They said, please send them to me. And you'll be surprised, without charging me a single dollar, they send me those 3 years diaries, which is about 350 pages. And they were all, each page was in a TIF image of 73 MB. I was still stuck in those days, the dial-up network. And I had to tell 5 people, please download it for me, because they were going to be on that V transfer only for 1 week. And so that's how cooperative they are.
This is such an Herculean task.
Their pictures, they are in the public domain. It's only a few libraries like the British Library that charge you for but they are open to negotiation. The first book on Panipat, when I used pictures from the British Library in London, I exchanged 23 emails with them. So from 230 pounds, which I had to pay in the beginning, I whittled them down to 70 pounds. Because I told them the cost of my book is not so much. I mean, your pictures are going to take away 1/4 the cost of my book if I pay 230 pounds for those pictures. So they came down to 70 pounds and I got those pictures from them. So this kind of thing, you have to be at it. Like Deccan College, the librarian there, the entire Riyasatkar Sardesai collection is in the Deccan College. Now I happened to be a speaker in one of the conferences of librarians. And there I told them that you are the gatekeepers and you are also the custodians of all these things. But you must allow researchers to access these documents. So that librarian of Deccan College was in the audience that day. So when I went to her a month later that I want to access some things in your library. Sir, basana sir. Like, I've never been used to such VIP treatment. So she had heard that lecture and she felt that it was kind of addressed to her that you must not bar us from entering. So on her own name, Riyasatkar Sardesai's books cannot be lent to anybody. You have to sit there and read the books themselves. And there are 10 cupboards of them. So you can imagine I would be spending a year sitting there. So what she used to do is she used to get the book issued on her own name and give it to me. So I used to go home. In fact, one more thing which I have not mentioned is that from the Jaikar Library of the University of Pune and the Deccan College, these very rare books which are published 100 years back, out of print, not available anywhere, I used to borrow them. I could get 5 books at a time from the Jaikar Library and 1 book from Deccan College. And I used to scan them with a very primitive camera. One left hand is turning the page, right hand is clicking the photograph. And that way I must have taken about 100,000 photographs, which are all on my hard disk. So during
Can't imagine.
During the COVID years of 2.5 years when the libraries were closed, we were not having any access, my entire library was in my hard disk. And during that was also my most productive period. In 2.5 years, I could write 3 books without visiting a single library. So today when I sit on my laptop, everything is at my fingertips. Everything is accessible. I want to look at Peshwa Daptar number 7, it is there on my laptop. If I want to say Aityasik Lek Sangha volume 15, it is there on my laptop. So that way, these are all out of print, written 1899. In fact, a stage came when my son was doing a post-graduation in London and he had access to the King's College Library. So more than him using medical documents, I was downloading history documents. So a stage came when the Deccan College librarian approached me that we want an article published in the Journal of Pakistan Historical Society, which I had got from London. So I said, give me 2 days, I'll get it for you. So
last thing was amazing, sir. Salute to you. इतना ज़्यादा, सारी कायनात फिर आपको मदद करने के लिए तैयार होती है. ऐसा है कि जब इतनी शिद्दत से जब कोई चाहता है तो. So, सर, amazing ऐसा लग रहा है और बहुत सारी बातें सुननी है. It's a learning experience, right? It's a learning experience. It's not about book. It's not about his mastery on that era, but it's about the journey of, going through that passion and writing such books like 7. Sir, what next? What we are looking forward for now?
I don't know if the upper story gives me time.
Yeah.
Because nowadays we are finding a lot of people
You're pretty young, sir. we expect another 25 books, not an issue.
So I still have to complete this period till 1818.
Okay.
And as you go further, you find that the period gets shorter. And I don't think people can absorb more than this size book at one go. Yeah. So next period probably will deal till 1784. From this period to 1784. That's the plan.
That's an amazing, and we look forward
Take
for
1.5 to 2 years more.
yeah, why not? And I mean, we look forward with the kind of research and सर एक आखिरी क्वेश्चन पूछ लेता हूँ दिन में कितने घंटे आप इस पे डालते हो आई मीन
Yes.
one year and like something coming out like this level.
Actually, I compartmentalize the book. So I deal with one chapter at a time. I know what I have to put in that chapter.
Right.
So and a chapter takes 10 days, one chapter.
Great.
The first draft takes 10 days. So once I start writing, it doesn't, Panipat I wrote in 4 months. It was
Great,
complete,
great.
first
I mean,
shot.
this
So
is
once I start writing, it will be in 1 year, the book will be ready.
amazing,
That won't take
amazing. A big round of applause for sir. Thank you so much, sir, for, I mean, it was such an encouraging and learning experience for all of us. And I think we are open for questions.
Yeah, we're opening the floor for questions.
Yes, we have somebody, please.
I think we'd only be able to take 3 questions at max. I'd like to tell everybody that sir will be available for a candid conversation in the lawn after the session.
We'll take few questions, yeah, please.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
I'd like to discuss about warfare. In 18th century, warfare had changed. European drill methods had taken over. Mahatma Scindia had, I think, Benoit de Bonnier to train his army. Similarly, French-trained armies were a part of Mysore army. Yet, Madhavrao Peshwa had successfully defeated Hyder Ali on multiple occasions. So, did Madhavrao Peshwa also involve European drill methods in his army, or did he foresee the importance of European drill methods in the army?
Actually, the European methods, as you say, came to the Maratha power just before Panipat. When Ibrahim Khan Gardi, who was a French-trained gunner, with his artillery changed sides from the Nizam to the Marathas. But the Marathas had not mastered it, how to use the artillery at the Battle of Panipat. And after Battle of Panipat, they went back to their guerrilla tactics. It was much, much later in Mahaji Shinde's time when he found that he had to face the English in some battles, that he realized, especially in the first Anglo-Maratha war, the last 2 years, 1780 to 82, he realized that without a competent artillery, he cannot do it. So that is when, using French, who were the natural adversaries of the English, using their technical know-how, he cast cannons which were of the right bore, which had the right size cannonballs. And so in fact, it came to a stage in 1803 when the second Anglo-Maratha war between the Scindias and the English East India Company took place, that the English took the Maratha cannons, sent them to London to research how are they better than our cannons. That was a stage we had reached at that time. Madhavrao did make effort to cast cannons and so on during his time. The English did not give any weapons to the Marathas. In fact, if they gave them, they were either spoilt or substandard equipment, which was handed over.
My question is a bit different from what everybody else is asking. You being a doctor, how much of resistance have you faced given the fact that history in this country has been the province of a select few? It has been very difficult from an outsider's point of view to enter into the discourse of history. As we have seen in the recent past, one of the authors, I would name him, Vikram Sampath, faced a lot of backbiting, bad naming, shaming on media, social media, publicly, for being not a historian. He's basically a he's a PhD in music from the University of Australia. But he ventured into history. He has produced, yes, the book is a bit on a controversial issue from today's narrative.
Sir, I'd like to request you to keep it short. The
Yeah,
question,
so
the
how much-
question I think
so how
is
much-
what is the kind of
No, but I
resistance
need to
you've
give
had?
the background because
No,
the
I've got
discourse
the
is-
question.
Yeah.
Basically, what happens is that when you write, it's the methods of research that are important. So when you do your surgery or when you're seeing a patient, you go about it clinically. You're dispassionate to your patient because your patient has got cancer doesn't mean you get involved emotionally with them. Similarly, I look at history in a dispassionate manner. History can really make your blood boil, but you have to look at it dispassionately. You have to look at it as a subject which you are investigating, and you have to put forth a version which will not offend anybody. At the same time, it should not be, there should be no slant in your writing. That's why the references are important. When you make a statement, you have considered all the varying points of view, and very often I present them also. I have presented the Persian version of the burning of Pune. Bilgrami, the Nizam's historian. I've mentioned what he said. The Maratha letters, There's not a single linga left in Pune, a letter like that. So these are, I mean, if anybody has to contest, they have to contest the letters, not me. No, no. I'm not talking about Vikram Sampath's.
Yeah,
But you'll be surprised to hear that
Yeah.
Jadunath Sarkar's basic qualification was English literature. He wrote history after that. He even.
Yes, sir.
You talk about Swami. What is the difference between the popular narrative about Madhav Rao and the Peshwai which you explored? And a related question, the term Peshwai itself has been discredited by a particular set of history writers in contemporary Maharashtra. And a very virulent attack is being made on Peshwai. Having studied Peshwai right from Bayaji Vishwanath up to second Bajirao, what is your take on the role of Peshwai in nation building?
Actually, the thing is that the Peshwa was the most important person in the Maratha state from Bajirao's time. This is a fact. I mean, this is not something which is motivated speech which I'm telling you. And therefore, what they did ultimately affected the fortunes of what happened to the Marathas from 1720 onwards. So that is why this period is called the Peshwai to start with. Otherwise, why was it not called Peshwai during Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj's time? He had a Peshwa, Moropant Pingle was there, he led armies into battles, but it was not called a Peshwai. The sovereign was strong. It was a centralized administration. The army was paid by the central treasury. Here, you find there is a confederacy. To get obedience from your chiefs 500 miles away was a difficult task even for the Peshwa. But he was the man where the buck stopped. He was not only taking care of the requirements of the sovereign, but he also had to raise the armies for the battle. He also had to get the monies dues from various provinces. So that is why this period is called the Peshwai. And then it's called the Uttar Peshwai. So the most, it's politics, and you should not say that why should a particular person grab power when it is coming his way. And for whatever reasons, there were rivalries within the Maratha fold, like when Bajirao fought with the Senapati at Dabhoi in Gujarat. And in the battle, Bajirao was telling his people that please don't fire at the Senapati. But one person who didn't listen to him and who had a personal grouse against the Senapati fired at him and killed him in the battle. So actual battles have taken place. The Scindias and Holkars have come to blows on the battlefield in 1791 at Laswari, where the Holkars were defeated by Maharji Shinde's armies. So these kind of rivalries were all built in within the Maratha fold. And as long as Madhav Rao was the last Peshwa who really exercised control over his chiefs, and you find in the first 5 years how he struggled to achieve control over his chief. It was not an easy task to extract obedience from them. So this went on like that.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
We'll take one last question.
One last question.
Final question.
He is, of course, available of that. Bola, sir, bola. Yes, sir.
You'll be surprised that during Madhav Rao's time, there is a list available of 150 ships, and which were there at that time. And they had three major naval bases. One was at Vasai and Arnala. Second one was Kolaba, and the third one was Vijayadurg. When the fort of Sindhudurg is attacked, Madhav Rao writes to the Subedar at Vijayadurg, take your navy and go and defend that fort. What are you doing? So it is just that the Maratha navy was, because of a personal disagreement between Tulaji Angre and Nana Sahib Peshwa, which took place in 1756, that he wanted the fort of Vijayadurg discharged because Tulaji Angre was not obeying his commands. And he was the person who was in charge of the Maratha kingdom. So all that is discussed in my book on Nana Sahib. Actually, it's a very long chapter. I had given a 90-minute talk on the Maratha Navy, the first 100 years. And there is beyond that also in this book you will find many references about the Maratha Navy. The Maratha Navy was finally eclipsed till 1818 you will find Vasai was under Maratha charge, Vijayadurg was under Maratha charge, Kolaba was in Maratha charge. The west coast was under Maratha hands. So to say that the Maratha Navy got over and was finished is not true. The land wars were more important because occupation of land was more important. But
Maratha Navy coming from a Navy officer.
But the enemy had already reached here. Like a letter from Madhav Rao tells, his officers in Delhi that सर्व टोपीकरांमध्ये इंग्रजाने डोके वर काढले आहे. So don't let him enter Delhi. Once he enters Delhi, it will be difficult to get rid of him. From Calcutta to Masulipatam to Surat, all the ports have been captured by him. So beware of this man. This is a letter which is published in this book, which he says that.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
A big round of applause for sir. I mean, this अशा गप्पा मारतच राहाव्या आणि त्या काळात सरांनी आम्हाला नेलाय. Once again, a big thank you to you, sir. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Dr. Kulkarni will be available in the lawn for candid conversation. Sir, we'd like to present to you a token of appreciation that has been made by a very young artist called Sairi Chaudhary, especially for you.